The second and more, I think, explosive element was that Okada, and I quote, refuses to work with young talent. Right? So if you take that at face value, and I'm not saying that you should, right? But let's explore that possibility because I did, and I found that it explains an awful lot of things that we were really scratching our heads over last year. So questions like, well, most obviously, what happened to the Okada versus the youth program? Why was there no payoff to the Kaito feud? Why wasn't he in the G1A block, which would have made much more sense than Sanada, which would have set out months and years of future feuds? Why is he fucking around with the six-man titles? Why hasn't he been used to put over the younger guys? Why is he only having singles matches against established names like Danielson and Ospreay and Tanahashi? Why is there no sign of a pass on the torch moment as he leaves the company? So I put it to you that 36-year-old Kazuchika Okada saw the writing on the wall, as you would say, realised that he'd peaked in terms of G1 wins and world title wins and Wrestle Kingdom main event wins, and understood that his future value to the company was establishing the next generation, and thought, to a large extent, fuck that noise.
Yep.
So is it a stretch to imagine Okada being at that Muto retirement show at the Tokyo Dome back in February and seeing all that hullabaloo, all that money lining Muto-san's pockets and thinking, you know what, maybe he's not wrong. I've got a wife and a kid. My body hurts every day. I'm not getting any younger. I don't fancy breaking my back for crap money to set up a bunch of guys who are going to take my spot. Some who don't even work for this company. So maybe he looked at Muto-san and thought, this is a guy who's taking care of himself and protected his image and been very selective about who he works with and whom he puts over. He's got financial security in buckets. Maybe this is the smartest guy in the room. So that's a bit of conjecture from me. I'm going to give me a bit of creative freedom here. So I look back to those Kaito Kiyomiya interactions because I think they're really important. They may well have been the turning point here. And I'm sure like the broad strokes of that infamous tag match brawl, the kick to the face, were planned by and large. But I do now retrospectively wonder about that kick to the face and everything that followed, knowing what we know. So is it a kick that might be right up there with Akira Maeda in terms of kicks that changed the course of pro wrestling? The spark that lit this fuse? Probably not. It's a fun thought, if you forgive me, that exploring that possibility. So then he's told he's working a singles match with Kaito at the Dome. And like I said, all this for a kid who doesn't even work for New Japan. So, like, do we think that Gedo and the No office are telling him to go out there, okay, you're going to have a 15-minute extended squash match with no future payoff?
Right.
Is it a stretch to imagine a scenario where Okada's saying, okay, fine, I'll wrestle this kid who's just booted me in the face, but it's for 15 minutes. I'm barely going to sell for him. I'm completely punking him out. So, maybe Okada didn't much care for Obari's vision of cross-promotional collaboration and found himself wondering, rightly or wrongly, why he was going through all of this to elevate another company's talent, which is a fair question. In hindsight, quite possibly a very daft, maybe even catastrophic thing to ask Okada to do. And it certainly explained why he reportedly hated Obari so much. So we move on. His next singles match is putting over Sleepy Sanada for the world title. His next singles match, he's been lying down for Bryan Danielson at Forbidden Door. So, again, is it outrageous to think at that point he's like, fuck this, and taking matters into his own hands, telling the office, look, my contract is up next January. I don't like this shit. We're going to do things my way or I walk. And that brings us nicely onto the G1, where we have that A block with Kaito and Tsuji and Shota Umino, Ren and Gabe and Hikaru. That would have made way more sense with Okada in there instead of Sanada. And in fact, most people actually predicted that block with Okada in it before it was even announced.
Right.
I have heard whispers from multiple sources that they pitched that block to Okada, a block that presumably would have led to multiple star-making feuds for years to come. And he said, that doesn't work for me, bro. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And post G1 for the rest of 2023, no more singles matches for Okada. He's put on ice for the rest of the year with a 6-man belt. So, and do know who's getting the run from that. Who are his teammates for this great 6-man run? And it has been a great run. Young up-and-comers Tanahashi and Ishii. Mm-hmm. Might have been nice to bring one of the kids on that ride instead of a team with a combined age of 131. But there you go. So my question is this. Has Kazuchika Okada shown any willingness to help get over any of the new generation? Like, can you point to a single memorable example where he's selflessly worked to make Shota or Ren or Yuya or Tsuji look good? Because, like, they've stepped to him, sure, but has he given them anything. Like, he's barely even wrestled anything aside from a few tag matches. And there's a nice little quote from his Tokyo Sport interview yesterday, which, there are various different translations out there, but he says, I can tell you one thing about the future of New Japan. It's not a chance, it's a crisis. The next generation can't just think, oh, this is our chance. They have to step up and save the company, which makes you think, right? And Yuya, I think, is a particularly interesting person to look at. Right, Yota Tsuji, his excursion send-off match is a singles match with Naito. And usually that stuff with New Japan, very, very intentional, very carefully crafted. So as soon as Tsuji returns, he's immediately recoupled with Naito. He's put into LIJ, presumably to set up some rich long-term storytelling there. Yuya Uemura got his send-off singles match with Okada. And I spent plenty of time on this podcast speculating on the significance of that. Since he's returned, there have been 2 interactions between Okada and Yuya Uemura, an 8-man tag and a 6-man untelevised tag, and Okada's been on the winning side in both. Now, I admit, right, this part of it, I'm going full tinfoil hat, but just the win of the Yuya Just 5 guys landing and the lack of one of these young guys being in chaos does make me ask big questions about that, because I don't think that was the original plan. And I think I know why, and I don't think it's because of Yuya. So, I don't think the original plans from the booking committee were to have Okada completely avoid these guys with his contract running down and the very real possibility of him leaving. So we look at this final singles run that Okada's having now with Danielson at Wrestle Kingdom, Ospreay at Battle in the Valley, Tanahashi in Osaka. And I think that tells you a lot, right? I'm betting that Okada had plenty of say in that, if not outright dictating it. And who are the last guys that Okada's put over? Danielson, Forbidden Door, Ospreay in the G1, and Naito in the G1 final. And I would be very surprised if he's laying down for anyone else in these final few matches. And like the Tanahashi match, that makes narrative sense considering their history and, the Rainmaker shot roughly the same time of the year. But don't let that distract you on something I talked about last time we recorded. The real story here, what is that match replacing? And it's the Never 6-man title match where Kosei Fujita probably getting his big moment, which has quietly been bumped to Korakuen Hall. Do we think that's a coincidence? Do we think the office wanted that? Bearing in mind, the Osaka show sold out ages ago. And this Okada-Tanahashi match is like the 5th match on the card and probably going to lead into some big angle. I think Andrew on our Discord said, there'll probably be like a House of Torture beatdown and that will be one of the final matches. Or maybe, if reports are to be believed, and again, this is something that has been told to us, Okada didn't want to give Fujita his moment in Osaka. And look, don't hold your breath for Okada to be eating the losing fall in that 6-man either. So we got 2 matches as yet unannounced for Sapporo. And if one of those matches is like Okada staring at the lights for, I don't know, Shota Umino, then I'll take that as everything I've just said being pure fantasy or a change of heart at least. But my money is on that final match being a big emotional love-in with all his Chaos buddies. Make no mistake, Okada, Tanahashi, Ishii against, I don't know, Goto, Yoshihashi, and Yano. Right, that's my shot. That's what I'm calling now. Wouldn't even shock me if that ends up actually being the next guys to get the Never 6-man titles if he can politic his way out of losing to Fujita and his TMDK team. So, last thing here as well, notice no big press conference about his departure, as you might expect for a departure of this significance. Now, again, as we have been told, it was discussed. It was discussed, but apparently Mr. Chairman said, fuck that. He's leaving. Fuck him. Yeah. So, again, make no mistake. The company, I feel, are holding their noses and playing nice until he's gone. But there's some very real resentment here. And again, this is not me absolving the office entirely of blame. There's plenty of fuck-ups on their part. If they really wanted to push these kids, there were lots of other guys on the roster who would have happily done it. So we're not giving them a pass like, well, Okada won't do it, so I guess we can't push them.
Right.
So they don't get a freebie on failing to elevate any of those guys to the required level. That is still malpractice. The blame lies very much at the door for that. But if we're talking purely about Okada, I cannot accept that the plan for the booking committee for post G1 Okada was to fuck around with the Never 6-man titles and avoid the young guns like the fucking plague. Yeah. Right? With these big stars, it's always a negotiation, isn't it? Like, do we think Tony Khan is ordering his top stars around and telling them exactly who they're wrestling and who they're jobbing to? Because there's plenty of evidence suggesting that is not the case. So, if you're wondering why the office would indulge him in all of this, his contract was up. He had all the leverage.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what else they could have done without making it into a massive public scandal. And, I'd normally be more than happy to hold their feet to the fire because, like I said, Lord knows they've screwed up in plenty of other ways in recent years with no rhyme or reason. I don't think this is one of them, right? Like I said, the only option is hold your nose, put on a brave face, pretend it's all good, smile and wave until he's gone. Because Okada's got a lot of fans, and presumably you want them to keep watching the product and buy tickets after he's gone. So that's my piece, Damon. Like, and listeners, don't take my word for it. There's a fairly good chance that someone in the company's playing me like an absolute fiddle, knowing that if they fed me these little scraps, that I would spin this elaborate narrative and attempt to poison the fan opinion against Okada. And if that is the case, then quite frankly, I'm flattered and happy to go steam ahead with it. And quite frankly, I've done such a great job of making some of those really bizarre shit in 2023 make sense retrospectively by painting Okada as this pantomime villain. Now, I'm in too deep now, and to some extent, I'm having a bit of fun here with the nuggets we've been given, and I'm not even necessarily criticising Okada. I mean, maybe a bit, but at the end of the day, you got to look out for yourself and your family. I respect that. However, if you do believe some of what I've just said, maybe Okada leaving isn't the worst thing in the world.